Hello, and welcome to the C3 Method Podcast with your host, Robert Poletic. Our goal is to educate you on everything health and fitness related with a clear, concise, and customized approach. We want you to know what you need to know and how to apply it in a way that fits you best. Today's podcast number 2288. We're going to be discussing hybrid programming concepts for strength and running. I currently have a client who's getting ready for a military prep. So basically, they're getting ready to go into the military. They are coming from a strength background, so they have very good strength base. However, they do need to build upon their endurance. They have a history of swimming, but they need to build up their running endurance, and then also the component that might not be glaringly obvious is they're needing to learn how to manage maintaining and hopefully building the strength they currently have while creating space in their training schedule, space in their recovery capacity, and then eating correctly, sleeping correctly, doing all the support correct so that way they can create some space in their performance adaptation. So not only do we want them to be able to continue to train for strength, but do so in a new way that now allows room for endurance training, but be able to survive the endurance training and be able to make progressions in the endurance training. This is new for them because previously they would spend all of their schedule, all of their recovery capacity, and they were eating and doing what they needed, all based on strength as being the only component in their program. So now that we're thinking about and have the goal of adding endurance performance to their training, unfortunately, what most people do is they think they're going to keep everything they're currently doing and then just add running. And it's like, oh, no, no, no. If we were doing the strength training correctly, you would have been using 100% of your capacity to get as much as you could from the strength. So you were already at 100% of what your schedule could do, your recovery could do, your performance adaptation could do. Basically, what your body could handle was already at 100%. And now you're thinking of just adding a whole component on top of that. Unfortunately, we might have the desire and the phrase to say, I always give 110%, whatever the hell it is, whatever people say. Your body only has 100. So we can get rid of all these cliche sayings. Your body can only do so much at one time. And we have to then decide how much do we allocate to each of the things that we want to do. This is helpful for us just in regular life management. If we want to get ahead in some goal, we still have relationships to manage, work to manage, all these other components in our life to manage. So we want to give as much of 100% that we have to each individual thing, make sure we're allocating our 100% correctly. And that's essentially what I'm working with this client. They are a trainer themselves. They have some good certifications behind. They're very intelligent. So what we're working together to do is to say, okay, if you've previously been giving 100% to strength, what does it look like when we need to pull that back and now make space for endurance style training? So what I wanted to do in today's podcast was share the most recent program that I wrote for them and discuss some of the concepts that are layered into their workouts and how we're structuring their weekly workouts for weight training. We include swimming because they need that in their prep, as well as running. So how do we modify the strength component to still be making good progress, but knowing that we can't give 100% like we used to? How do we modify that component? And then also, how do you modify and add in endurance-based training? So let's go through their most recent program, and I'll share the what's and the whys. Okay, if our schedule for them is going to be weight training 3 days a week, they can kind of set this up however they want, but I would like them to have 48 hours in between. So it can be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It can be Monday, Thursday, Saturday. If they have to do back-to-back days, that's okay, but it's not ideal. We would like to spread that out a little bit. And the reason why is the weight training is going to have some connective tissue stress, some muscle tissue stress in regards to structural stress. And the more we can space that out, the less of a deficit we create and therefore it makes it easier for the body to manage the recovery of that while also adding in swimming and running and her other endurance events. So if you can, if you're still including strength-based training in your hybrid programming, you want to try to space that out so that way you don't bury the tissues too deep. So for example, if we were to lift on Monday and Tuesday and then they went for an aggressive run on Wednesday, they're more likely to pull a hamstring or to have hamstring tightness or hamstring issues or something going on with maybe like their adductor super tight, so it's causing knee pain. They're going to have more problems on that Wednesday with the running than if they were to have weight training on Monday, running on Tuesday, weight training on Wednesday. It's actually better for us to stretch the weight training out than it would be to have it back to back. So that's a simple example of something that is very significant in regards to making modifications to strength-based training. So somebody, if they've been previously training, say, for powerlifting, maybe they were training Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, so it'd be squat on Monday, bench on Tuesday, Thursday might be deadlifts, and Fridays like bench accessories. That might be an example. So they were used to that schedule where it was 2 days back to back, a day off, 2 days back to back, a day off. So they might think, well, you know what? Instead of me taking a rest day on Wednesday, let me just add running. Instead of me taking a rest day on Saturday, let me add running. And it's like, that's an example of how we could do it, but it might not be optimized. A more optimal schedule would be to have our weight training be spaced apart to better manage the tissue stress. So that's a cool example, something small that you can kind of tweak with your scheduling that'll make a significant difference. Then they're going to be swimming 1 to 2 times a week. They actually have a really good background in swimming, so we're just really looking to kind of fine tune that a bit and just kind of reawaken skills and abilities they've already had. So once or twice a week is plenty. And then our running is 2 to 3 times a week. So we're planning for essentially a minimum of 7 bouts of exercise a week. That would be the 3 weight training. Well, I guess like 3 weight training, 1 swimming, and 2 running. So that would be 6. So we're counting for 6. So on some of the days, they might need to double up. They might need to do, a swimming and running together. Or maybe they'll do running in the morning, eat a couple meals, and then weight train in the afternoon, or vice versa. There's going to be a little bit of a scheduling adjustment there. And this is actually how I like to do it with my clients is we say, okay, here are the components we want to get in per week. These are the time frames of how frequent we would want these to be. Now, let's see what your week looks like this week. Let's decide what days is that going to work. Because maybe they have a work event on Thursday. Maybe they're like a hybrid worker, so they work from home. But all of a sudden, they now have to go to the office, so they're not going to be able to run midday. So what does it look like on that? Maybe Thursday, we actually take that day off, and we bump everything to Friday and Saturday, and maybe even have to add a little bit on Sunday. So every week is a little bit different, and I like allowing that to be the case because it lessens stress. And it prevents like a burnout. It prevents a lot of just unnecessary stress when people say, oh, I have to do this on this day. And if there are options, why would we not exercise those options in order to reduce stress and help us better manage balancing our other demands in life, relationships, work, and other things, along with training? So that's the way I like to set that up, is we know the elements we want to have. We know around the time frames and scheduling, so let's get them in as early in the week as we can with appropriate timing, and that way we can front load the week and back off a little bit if we need, or if life is chaotic, which it always is, it gives us a little bit of space to bump things to later in the week if we need to. Now, their weight training, I have a whole bunch of stuff in their program that talks about how to warm up for exercises, how to have rest times, how do you select the right weight? How do you make weekly progressions? When they send me videos, the angles I want them to send me videos and which videos. So there's a lot of background information. And then the program itself, for the weight training, we start all weight training workouts with what I would categorize as movement prep. So movement preparation. We would want to assume safely that when we walk in the gym, I'm not just going to boom, go right away. So I'm not going to walk through the doors, high five a buddy, say hello to somebody, and then start barbell squatting. That is not ideal for our connective tissues, our muscle tissues. It's just our body system in general. It's not good for performance either. So there's a ton of things we can do to ensure that our body is ready for the day. And that not only mitigates injury, mitigates kind of like acute small annoyances that can build up, but it also maximizes our performance. If we prepare our body correctly, we can actually prep our body appropriately for adrenaline, which is kind of like our focus and aggression, and endorphins, which is our painkillers. So we can actually prepare our body chemically for better performance with a proper movement preparation. For this client, what we're doing is we're starting with foam rolling. We're going to foam roll to make sure that we address the adductor. We're going to address the TFL and the quadricep, which is the TFL is tensor fasciae latae. I forget exactly, but that's around a mumbly version of what it actually is. But it's a muscle at the top end of your IT band. And if that thing is tight or annoyed, it will pull on the outside of the knee and it will create some knee discomfort. And it's not uncommon for that to be tight and annoyed if the person sits a lot or even if they stand a lot. Like I remember when I used to train clients 40 to 50 hours in person a week, my hips would get crazy tight from actually standing. And I would have to make sure I would stretch a lot to make sure I could move properly and get into like a proper depth of a squat because I hadn't done that all day. I'd been standing all day training clients, so everything kind of locked in to that standing position. So we commonly think when people sit for long times, they're going to need a lot of stretching. But also if you stand for a long period of time, you're going to need to stretch as well. So we go through the foam rolling, adductor, TFL, quads, and then the upper lat connection. If a person's lats are tight, that can kind of mess up your shoulder posture, and then that would get in the way of external rotation when you're getting in position for like barbell squats or like overhead presses, bench presses, really any kind of upper body movement. We want to make sure our shoulder joint, like all the musculature of our shoulder, is appropriately tensioned, so that way the shoulder isn't rolled forward and inward, which can then create a lot of pain in the front of the shoulder when you're doing pressing movements, push-ups, chest presses, dumbbell presses, or overhead presses. So we go through the foam rolling, get everything ready for the body. Then we have dynamic stretching movements that I will modify per workout. It allows us to not be bored, so it's not the same routine every time. And then also it allows me to focus on different angles and positions for the muscles across the entire program. So I like to program individual workouts for the whole week, and then they repeat those workouts weekly for 4 weeks, and then we get a whole new program. So I write new programs for my clients every 4 weeks. That is more often, like more frequent than most trainers would do because it's more work. But I'd rather do the work, have people get great results, stay healthy, and we achieve greatness and work together for years and years and years. So I'd much rather do it that way. So I write new programs every 4 weeks. There are a few scenarios where I might do it more often or less often depending on what the person's needs are. It's really what's best for the person. But in general, I like 4-week progressions because the first week you're kind of figuring out what you're doing. The second week you're feeling more confident with what you're doing. The third week you kind of like did the best you could do. And then the fourth week it's like, I got to really stretch myself, push myself to try to make a positive adaptation in reps or weight or like technique quality. There's going to be some challenge, serious challenge in week 4 to make a significant progression in performance, which makes the progression in our adaptation stimulus, meaning the desire the body would have to continue to make progress from the stress we're putting it under. What I've found, and this is over 3,000 clients, I've been training people since I was 16 years old, I'm 41, so I've been doing this for 25 years, is that when you go longer than 4 weeks, the significance of the improvement that they're able to make, the progression they're able to make from week to week to week, from workout to workout to workout, gets lower and lower and lower. Their technique becomes increasingly more sacrificed in order to try to get an extra rep or 2.5 extra pounds or something. And we start to get small, acute little annoyances and injuries, or the person says like, I wasn't able to make progress in this, the whole workout was a waste, and you get these emotional and mental kind of downfalls. I really like 4-week progressions. It seems to be frequent enough that people can force their body to adapt to a stimulus, but then it's changed often enough that we avoid the acute aches and pains and downfalls emotionally and mentally. It is a system I really enjoy. I've been, proven it by getting people IFBB Pro cards and natural, like drug tested pro cards in aesthetics. I've helped people get, elite totals, international elite totals in powerlifting, setting, many records. I've worked with professional athletes, Olympic athletes, a ton of people with rehab, and so it's worked in many domains of training, and it gets positive reviews every time, works every time, so I really enjoy it. That's the structure. So with the dynamic stretching, we would do different movements every week, every workout, and then they repeat that, like I said, for the 4 weeks. So the first workout she has here, an example would be, these are going to be kind of complex to verbalize. So we'll just say that we're using a slider in half kneeling and quadruped positions, like hands and knees on the floor kind of positions, to where we're going to work on opening and stretching and strength challenging the groin, adductors, and hamstrings. And that's going to relate to keeping those muscles more open between our training sessions and between our running sessions. Those muscles will typically get tight from being stressed, and they get stressed and get tighter sooner the weaker they are. So what we're looking to do in our weight training is we want to challenge that tissue in an appropriate stress load, but a challenging stress load, and through a full range of motion. So that coaxes the body to open up those muscles because we're loading slowly and properly into the stress. We're going to open up the full range of motion. We're going to load the full range of motion. That then develops strength. So then the body feels safer to leave the full range of motion available to us. Really, when muscles get super tight, it's because they were stressed. The body felt like it was a risky stress, so it tightens everything down to protect it from being stressed again. We want to open things up, stress them, strengthen them, and then the body stays more open. This is going to allow her to have less aches and pains or weird annoyances when she's running. And that's going to help us just have better performance, better recovery, less like aches and pains in the lower back, the joints, the hips, the knees, ankles, everything like that. So that's her movement prep for this first workout, is the quadruped and half kneeling, adductor, groin, and hamstring stretches, dynamic stretches. Then we go into some more broad movements just to open up again more ranges of motion, load it a little bit heavier, and she warms up. Her main lift for this workout is squats. So we're going to do some deep lunge into a Cossack squat. So that's actually a deep lunge, and then you rotate into a Cossack squat, which is a groin and hamstring and adductor stretch. And then the deep lunge is those muscles, but more so the hip flexor and quadricep. So we're basically rotating by loading the tissues in different percentages, and that's going to mimic what she would feel, like the muscles would feel when being loaded in running mechanics, like unilateral running mechanics, lunges, step-ups, and then also squats. So that's preparing her for squats. And then we have body weight side lunge drops. This is basically you pick your knee up and you fall out to the side. You put your foot down and throw yourself back up. So it's a side lunge done in a very explosive way. This is going to help build her connective tissues because we're basically multiplying the force of her body weight into the connective tissues and muscles by doing it in this explosive manner. That's going to build up durability in her connective tissues. And again, continue to load these muscular tissues through full range of motion so that way they stay more open in between workouts. They get stronger over time, and that staves off injury. Then with her squats, we're doing weight plate adductor floor slides. So you just throw a weight plate on the floor and you slide it back and forth from foot to foot to foot, and that uses your adductors. So again, more adductor strength work. And then she has hip circle side to side shuffles. So this is actually abduction. So adduction is when you're kind of pushing your feet together against resistance. Abduction is when you're pushing your feet apart against resistance. So that's going to work her glute min, glute major, glute med, basically the opposing components to her adductors in her hips. So we have a lot of hip-based work. And then her squats, we're actually doing camber bar squats. A camber bar is, you can think of it as an upside down U. The bar goes across your back, but then the bar hangs down to around your hips, and then it sticks out to the side, and that's where you would load the plates. So the plates are actually hanging down by your hips, even though the bar is across your upper back. What that does is it reduces the ability for the spinal erectors and quadriceps to take over on a squat. Since you can't use your quadriceps and spinal erectors as the main dominant movers with a camber bar, it forces more engagement through the adductors and glutes. This is going to help balance her muscle mechanics. Whenever the first program we did, she did a barbell, like basically a high bar squat. And although a high bar squat is supposed to be quad dominant, she was very quad dominant. You could tell in her mechanics that the adductors and glutes were going to be, they're weaker. So I wanted to modify the variation that we were doing, and it would force the balanced engagement of the adductors and glutes, whether she wanted to or not. So basically, by me changing the bar, it took it out of a choice for her. She doesn't have to try to remember a cue. She doesn't have to try to do anything right or wrong. It's no longer on her to do it a certain way. By simply changing the bar, it's going to force the new way. And that way we can get the adaptation we want. She's not going to feel like she's, the problem if things don't go right or wrong. It's easier just to kind of swap the bar if you got the bar and force the body to move in the different mechanics that'll better balance what we want. So if we think about running mechanics and overall endurance, if we're looking at maximal performance, we want to have the muscle strength balanced in the lower body. We want to make sure our quadriceps, our hip flexors, our glute median, all those, the adductors, the hamstrings, everything. We want it all to be equally balanced. You could tell in our squatting mechanics that we don't have an equal balance. So switching the squat style, switching the variation is going to force that balance over time. So that was the main reason for that change. And for that one, she's going to be doing a couple sets building up to one max effort set taken to good form failure. Now, that is the first workout. We actually have a second and a third workout. The second one features more bench press and farmer's carries. She's, strength-based background, so she wanted to bench press. So, of course, we're going to throw that in. It's good to keep upper body strength for sure. That helps with overall posture. So that's definitely something we want to keep in. Workout number 3, we have focused more around smaller movements. So our main circuit in workout number 3 is pull up isometrics into a slow eccentric, and this is going to build up her basically complementary muscles on the upper body to the bench press. So the opposing muscles of the bench press, we're going to build that in workout number 3. We're also going to do single leg 45 degree hyperextensions. That's awesome workload for the hamstring connective tissue. So the hamstring down by the knee, the hamstring up at the hip, it's going to really build up her connective tissue strength and help open up the hamstrings to make sure that they're open and strong over time. We then do jump lunge into sprint and single leg bounds into sprint, which is going to again work on lower body muscular strength balance and then also connective tissue strength over time. So that's the main circuit for the third workout. Then we have the swim workouts and the running workouts. With her swimming background, she knows what to do in terms of distances and whatnot. So I just gave her some guidance on long duration, short duration. Workout number 1, we know is going to be more so in the middle of the week while we're mixed in with all the stress of life and work and our other workouts. So we're going to focus on a low intensity warm up, some sprint interval efforts. And then if she has a little bit of time, she can finish with like a low intensity, long duration. But we're more so looking to hit it hard and heavy, but get in, get out in the middle of the week. That's going to give us the nice stress that we need to make progressions, but it's not going to wear us out. And then if she gets a second session of swimming in, that's when we might do more of the long duration, whatever intensity we can manage for that duration. But that would likely bury us a little bit deeper. So that's better for like a weekend when she has more recovery capacity. Then for running, we have proper warm-up that she does. So again, movement prep, make sure all the hip muscles and everything's ready for running. Then session number 1, which is going to be during the week, we have sprint intervals. So this month, what we're doing is she does a half-mile kind of warm-up pace, and then she does quarter-mile sprint and then a quarter-mile walk repeated 4 times. So just a 1 mile total, but it's a sprint for a quarter mile, walk for a quarter mile, sprint for a quarter mile, walk for a quarter mile. And that's going to get her that high intensity effort, And then session number 2 is more of a moderate intensity, and then session number 3 is more of the duration. So when we're mixing in our strength-based training, work week, high stress, when you do endurance-based work, you want to make it short burst, high sprint, high intensity, but not long duration. And then when you have more recovery capacity on the weekends, maybe you can get a little more sleep. Now our weight training is already done for the week, so now it's just the endurance-based work. Then you can push the intensity and the duration more, knowing that now you're going to have more capacity to recover from that. We actually require less recovery demand from just a few sprint burst efforts than we would from, say, an hour of running as best as we can for a full hour. That's going to drain you a lot more. So that's her program, and you can hear how she's coming from a strength background, so we're still adding in, squats and bench press, still adding in some fun stuff, but maybe we drop from 4 to 5 days a week to now just 3. That's going to allow us to not only keep her base, but still continue to progress. We build in a ton of movement preparation, a ton of small tissue stress to where we're working on improving her range of motion in the muscles, but strengthening them. So we not only want to have flexibility, which is the availability of a muscle to move through a full range of motion, we want to have strength through that range of motion. So that it would be considered mobility. So flexibility is, can you move through a full range of motion? Mobility is, can you do that like under load? So that's actually what we really want, is the strength component combined with full available range of motion. We're going to be doing that. Those workouts probably take her about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes, depending on her rest periods. And then we have the swimming and running kind of mixed in. And again, the weight training is set up to be about every 48 hours. And that's going to allow her to get her endurance-based work in, but not bury us too deep where we can't recover in between these workouts. So I thought it'd be fun to share a little bit about the way in which the workouts are structured, not only for the weight training, but also the swimming and the endurance events like the running, and then the little bit of elements we have between exercise selections that's specific to her, but also concepts that everybody might use, which would be starting with movement prep and kind of loading yourself, starting with basically low intensity, low load things, and then you get progressively more intense, more loading throughout the workout, and then you end with like your big aggressive thing. That's going to allow you to feel prepared for the big thing, to lessen small joint annoyances. It's actually going to allow you to improve performance, and your overall recovery will be much better using this type of structure. Awesome. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions about creating this type of programming, you can also always reach out to us on our website, which is c3method.com, and 3 is spelled out T-H-R-E-E, so C-T-H-R-E-E method.com. You can also shoot an email to c3method@gmail.com, and again, the 3 spelled out T-H-R-E-E. Great. Okay. Well, if you like the podcast, please share it. The more people that know about it, the more people can be helped by it. If you like the information we share in the podcast, you can also find more from us. I post pretty much every day on Instagram, and I'm posting new videos 3 times a week on YouTube, and those are both under the name C3 Method. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.